The breaking point. The Valiant was dying. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge as another impact rattled through the hull, sparks cascading from overhead conduits. The lighting flickered between emergency red and complete darkness. Around her, what remained of her crew worked with mechanical precision. Not because they had hope, but because stopping meant surrender. And surrender meant the end of everything they were. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Lieutenant Chen reported, his voice steady despite the blood trickling down his temple. Reactor containment at 40%. Life support failing in sections B and C. Elena's knuckles were white against the command rail. Through the viewport, 6 Dominion dreadnoughts hung in the void like monuments to inevitability. Each one was 3 times the size of her heavy cruiser. Each one was pristine, undamaged, barely expending effort to dismantle her ship piece by piece. They were toying with her. All remaining vessels have jumped to FTL, Commander Park said, quietly from the tactical station. We're the last ones here? Captain. The last ones. The words sat heavy in the air. 23 ships had defended the Arcturus colony. 22 had fled or been destroyed. The Valiant remained. Not because Elena believed she could win, but because someone had to buy time. Someone had to let the transports get clear. Someone had to make the Dominion work for it. Damage report on the enemy? Elena asked. Park hesitated. Minimal. We scored hits on 2 of their destroyers. Surface scorching only. Their shields absorbed everything else. 57 crew members dead. Reactor about to breach. Hull integrity at 30%. And they'd barely scratched the paint on 2 enemy ships. This was what humanity had learned over the past 8 months. The Dominion didn't just outgun them. They outmatched humanity in every measurable category. Better shields, better weapons, better armor, better everything. And yet, humanity kept fighting, Captain, Chen said. And there was something different in his voice now. Something that made Elena look up. I'm picking up a transmission. Dominion standard frequency. They're hailing us. The bridge fell silent, except for the groan of buckling metal and the hiss of venting atmosphere. Somewhere deep in the ship's guts. Put it through, Elena said. The main screen flickered. Static resolved into an image that sent an instinctive chill through every human present. The Dominion commander was tall, nearly 8 feet, with chitinous plating that gleamed like oil, slick obsidian. 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern, regarded her with an expression humanity had learned to read contempt mixed with curiosity. The translator rendered its voice as smooth and cold. Human vessel. You have fought with unexpected persistence. But this theater is concluded. Your colony is ours. Your transports will not reach safety before our interception fleet arrives. Your resistance is meaningless. Elena said nothing. She could feel her crew watching her, waiting. The Dominion commander tilted its head, a gesture that was almost pitying. Your species exhibits a fascinating flaw. Every conquered race understands when battle becomes futile. They surrender. They adapt. They survive. It leaned closer to its own camera.
Why do you not?
Because, Elena said quietly, you're asking the wrong question. The 4 eyes narrowed. Explain. You're asking why we don't surrender. You should be asking what happens when you meet a species that can't. For a moment, there was silence. Then something that might have been amusement flickered across the alien's plated features. You believe your defiance makes you exceptional. We have conquered 4,730. 2 species across 11,000 years. Many claimed they would never kneel. All of them did. Eventually, Elena felt the deck shudder beneath her feet. Reactor warnings screamed across every console. They had minutes left. Maybe less. I'm going to give you something, she said. Call it a gift. A warning. Whatever you want. You have nothing we require. I'm going to show you what happens when you back humans into a corner and leave them nothing to lose. Elena turned to Lieutenant Chen. Is the reactor still responding to commands? Chen's eyes widened. He understood immediately. Captain. Answer the question, Lieutenant. Yes. Ma'am. Containment can be overridden manually. Elena looked back at the Dominion commander. Its expression had shifted slightly. The first hint of uncertainty she'd ever seen on one of their faces. You're attempting to threaten self-destruction, it said. This changes nothing. Your death serves no tactical purpose. We will simply. You're still not getting it. Elena interrupted. This isn't a threat. This isn't a negotiation. This is me teaching you something about humanity that you're going to wish you'd learned sooner. She gestured, and Tactical brought up a navigational overlay. The 6 Dominion dreadnoughts hung in space, arranged in a standard domination formation around the Valiant. They were close, very close. Close enough to ensure no escape. Close enough to demonstrate their superiority. Close enough. Every species you've conquered surrendered because they were rational. Elena continued. They calculated odds. They weighed outcomes. They made the smart choice. She smiled, and there was no humor in it. Humans aren't always smart. But we are stubborn. The Dominion commander's posture shifted, subtle, but Park caught it. Captain, he whispered. I think it's moving its ships. Too late. They were going to figure it out too late. Chen, Elena said softly. Override reactor containment. Set for catastrophic breach. Authorization. Vasquez Omega 7-7 November. Authorization confirmed, Chen said, and his voice cracked. 60 seconds to breach. The Dominion commander's image flickered, with what might have been rage. This is futile. Your reactor lacks the yield to destroy your dreadnoughts. You're right. Elena's smile widened. But it's enough to cripple 3 of them. Maybe 4 if we're lucky. And you know what happens then? You limp home. You report that one damaged human ship, managed to bloody the Great Dominion Armada. She leaned forward. And every species you've ever conquered is going to hear that story. Every slave world. Every broken people. They're going to learn that humanity fought you ship for ship, to the very end, and we hurt you. 45 seconds. Stand down. The Dominion commander said, and for the first time, there was urgency in its voice. Stand down, and we will grant your crew survival. This is an unprecedented offer. We will. No. 30 seconds. The image on the screen flickered as the Dominion ships finally began to maneuver. Huge vessels trying to gain distance, trying to escape the blast radius. But they were massive. Built for intimidation and power, not evasion. They were going to be too slow. "Captain," Park said quietly. "It's been an honor." Alina looked around her bridge. At Chen, still bleeding from his temple. At Park, who'd lost his entire family when the Dominion glassed his homeworld. At Okonkwo at navigation. At Rodriguez at engineering. At every face that had chosen to stand here, in this moment, knowing how it would end. "The honor," Elena said, "was mine." 20 seconds. The Dominion commander was saying something, but Elena muted the transmission. She didn't need to hear it. Didn't need threats or promises or last minute pleas. She knew what humanity was. She knew what the Dominion would learn. You could break human ships. You could shatter human worlds. You could kill every last one of them. But you could never, ever make them kneel. 10 seconds. Alina reached out and took Park's hand. Took Chen's hand. Around the bridge, her crew joined hands, forming a chain. "For Arcturus," she whispered. 5 seconds. "For Earth," Chen added. 3 seconds. "For humanity," they said together. 1 second. The Valiant died in a sphere of light that painted the void white. The reactor breach tore through the ship and expanded outward in a perfect sphere of annihilation. 3 Dominion dreadnoughts caught in the blast simply ceased to exist, vaporized in the fury. A 4th lost its aft section and began spinning toward the colony's gravity well. The remaining 2 limped away, shields collapsed, hulls scared. In the silence after, emergency beacons from the damaged Dominion, ships painted the darkness red, and across 6,000 light years of occupied space, listening stations recorded the encounter. Recorded the transmission. Recorded the moment one human ship refused to surrender. The message began to spread, echoes in the dark. The recording played for the 93rd time in the Dominion Strategic Command Chamber. Warlord Thexel stood motionless before the holographic display, watching the Valiant's final moments again. The white flash. The expanding sphere. 3 dreadnoughts snuffed out like candles. 20,000 Dominion warriors gone. Irrational, Thexel said quietly. Behind him, the Strategic Council remained silent. They had learned, over the past 6 cycles, that when the warlord spoke in that tone, response was not required. Only attention, completely irrational. Thexel repeated. The human commander gained nothing. Saved nothing. The colony fell within 3 cycles. The transports were intercepted as projected. Every tactical objective was achieved. He turned to face the council, his 4 eyes reflecting the frozen image of Elena, Vasquez's final smile. So why do I feel as if we have lost something? Sub. Commander Kelvoth, veteran of 400 campaigns, shifted his massive frame. With respect, Warlord, we lost 3 dreadnoughts and sustained critical damage to a 4th. The material cost is irrelevant. Thexel interrupted. The Dominion builds ships. We replace losses. We always have. He gestured at the hologram. But this is different. The chamber's environmental systems hummed in the silence. Outside the reinforced walls, the capital city of Nexus Prime sprawled across the planet's surface. 11,000 years of conquest, made manifest in architecture of subjugation and control. The human vessel's transmission has reached 47 occupied systems. Intelligence Director Sarkson reported, her scaled skin rippling with unease. We have intercepted it on secured channels. Resistance frequencies. Even civilian networks. Someone is spreading it deliberately. The content? Thexel asked, though he already knew. The final conversation. The detonation. And Sarkson hesitated. The humans have given it a designation. They call it the last transmission. They have turned their defeat into a symbol. Thexel was silent for a long moment. And the conquered species? What is their response? Minor unrest on 3 worlds. Nothing the peacekeepers cannot manage. But Sarkson paused. We are detecting anomalies in the data streams. Increased encrypted communications. Patterns suggesting coordination. Coordination between which species? All of them, Warlord. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. Commander Kelvoth's mandibles clicked. A dismissive gesture. Let them communicate. Let them share their human fantasies. Words change nothing. The Dominion's strength is absolute. One suicidal vessel does not alter the balance of power. No. Thexel agreed. It does not. He moved closer to the hologram, studying Elena Vasquez's frozen face. But it alters something else. Something we have relied upon for 11,000 years. Warlord. Inevitability. Thexel said softly. Every species we have conquered understood a fundamental truth. We cannot be defeated. Not meaningfully. Not in any way that matters. They surrendered not because we broke their ships, but because we broke their belief that resistance was possible. He tapped a claw against the projection. This human showed 47 occupied systems that someone still believes. Then we destroy that belief. Kelvoth said. We make an example of humanity. Glass their worlds. Exterminate them completely. Show the galaxy what happens to those who know. Kelvoth's 4 eyes widened. Warlord. Extermination would prove the humans' point, Thexel said. It would demonstrate that they frightened us. That one species, weaker than any we have faced, required total annihilation to stop. He turned away from the hologram. We will defeat humanity. We will occupy their worlds and integrate their survivors. We will demonstrate that their sacrifice changed nothing. And if they continue to resist, they will. That is their nature. Thexel moved toward the chamber's central strategic display, a galaxy painted in Dominion crimson, with humanity's small cluster of systems, glowing defiant blue on the periphery. But every species has a breaking point. We will find humanity's. We always do. Yara Ose kept her head down as she moved through the market district. The Dominion had been efficient. She'd give them that. Within 2 weeks of the colony's fall, they'd restored power, water, and basic services. The alien peacekeepers patrolled in pairs, their weapons visible but not raised. The message was clear: cooperate, and life continues. Resist, and suffer. Most people cooperated. Yara ducked into a maintenance access tunnel, checking over her shoulder before descending the ladder. The tunnel system had been designed for repairs and emergencies. The Dominion knew about them, of course, but they didn't bother to monitor every passage. Why would they? There was nowhere to run. Arcturus was an island colony, light years from the nearest human settlement. Resistance was, as they kept reminding everyone, pointless. The tunnel opened into a basement beneath the old communications hub. 15 people waited there, illuminated by the glow of portable lights. Yara recognized most of them teachers, engineers, farmers. Regular people who'd lost something. When the Dominion arrived, and couldn't quite swallow the acceptance, everyone else seemed to manage. "You're late?" Marcus said. He'd been a shuttle pilot before the invasion. Now he was just another civilian, trying to figure out what came next. Had to be careful. Peacekeepers are increasing patrols near the comm towers. Yara set down her pack and pulled out a salvage data pad. "But I got it. Full intercept of their traffic for the past 24 hours. Anything useful?" asked Chen. No relation to the lieutenant. Chen, who died on the Valiant. But that didn't stop him from wearing the name like armor. Depends on your definition of useful. Yara activated the pad. The Dominion is planning to integrate our manufacturing facilities into their supply network within 30 days. They want us building components for their fleet. Silence greeted this announcement. "So we become collaborators," someone muttered. "Or we starve," another voice added. "They control the food distribution. They control everything. They want us to forget," Marcus said quietly. "That's the play, isn't it? Make occupation comfortable enough that we stop remembering we're prisoners." Yara looked at the faces around her. She saw exhaustion, grief, fear, but also something else, something that had been absent in the first days after surrender, but had slowly grown stronger. She saw anger. "I have something else," Yara said. She switched files on the pad. "Got this through a back channel relay. It's been bouncing through the network, passed from system to system. Someone wanted us to see it." She hit play. Alina Vasquez's voice filled the basement. "Because you're asking the wrong question. You're asking why we don't surrender. You should be asking what happens when you meet a species that can't." Yara watched her small group as they listened to the full conversation. Watched their expressions shift. Watched as something changed in the air of the cramped basement. When the recording ended, with the white flash of the Valiant's reactor breach, no one spoke for a long moment. "They keep telling us resistance is futile," Chen finally said. "Keep reminding us that the Dominion has never been beaten, never been stopped." He looked at Yara. But Captain Vasquez stopped them. For just a moment, she made them flinch. "She died," someone pointed out.
Yeah,
Marcus agreed. She did. But not on her knees. Yara felt something solidify in her chest. A decision that had been forming. Since she'd first heard the transmission. First felt the spark of defiance it ignited. "The Dominion thinks they've conquered us," she said slowly. "They think because they took our colony, because they control our infrastructure, because they dictate our lives. They think we're theirs." She looked around the circle. "But they don't understand something about humans," Chen asked. "You can occupy our worlds," Yara said. "But you can't occupy our minds. And as long as we remember who we are, as long as we remember what Captain Vasquez and her crew stood for." She smiled grimly. "We're not conquered. We're just waiting." "Waiting for what?" Marcus asked. "For our moment." The intercepted transmission was tagged priority. Alpha. Analyst Prexon pulled up the file. Expecting another routine rebel communication. Standard encrypted chatter between human resistance cells, They were always chattering, these humans. Always plotting small acts of defiance that changed nothing. But this transmission was different. It wasn't encrypted. It was broadcast openly, on multiple frequencies, designed to reach as many systems as possible. And it wasn't in human language. It was in Velkari. Prexen felt her secondary hearts accelerate. The Velkari hadn't conquered 70. 3 cycles ago. They had been a warrior culture once. Proud and fierce. The Dominion had broken them in a campaign that lasted barely 4 standard months. They had been compliant ever since. Model subjects. She activated the translation matrix and listened. Brothers and sisters of the Velkari. You have heard the story of the human ship that refused to surrender. You have heard how they chose death over submission. I tell you now. We were once like them. We were once warriors who would rather die than kneel. When did we forget? When did we accept chains as normal? The humans remember who they are. Perhaps it is time we remembered who we are. The message ended. Prexen sat frozen at her console. This wasn't human rebellion spreading to conquered species. This was something worse. This was old rebellions waking up. She immediately flagged the transmission for strategic command and began referencing communication patterns. Within cycles, she'd identified 17 similar transmissions across 11 occupied systems. Different species, different languages, but all carrying the same messaging. The humans are showing us what we forgot. Prexen's final report to Warlord. Thexel was simple and devastating. The humans are not merely resisting conquest. They are reminding the galaxy how to resist. Recommend immediate escalation protocols. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the holographic display, watching the network of communications, spreading like fire through occupied space. The Dominion is going to respond, her intelligence officer said. They can't let this continue, Doe. I know. Sarah studied the data streams. 47 systems had received the last transmission. Now secondary broadcasts were emerging from within those systems. Conquered species talking to each other, sharing stories, remembering their own failed rebellions. The valiant sacrifice was becoming something neither humanity nor the Dominion had anticipated a catalyst. What are our force projections? Sarah asked. Grim. The Dominion still outnumbers us 50-1 in capital ships. We've evacuated 6 more colonies in the past month, and we're running out of places to retreat to. At current projections. The officer hesitated. 8 months, maybe 12. Then they reach Earth. Sarah nodded slowly. 8 months, 12 if they were lucky. The Dominion was coming. And all the defiance in the galaxy couldn't change the mathematics of firepower and numbers. But maybe it didn't have to. Elena's message is working, Sarah said quietly. Not the way she intended, perhaps. She wanted to buy time for transports. Instead, she bought us something else. Sarah gestured at the communication network, sprawling across the display. The Dominion has conquered the galaxy, because no one believed they could be stopped. Every species fought alone, fell alone, and surrendered alone. She turned to her officer. But what if they didn't have to fight alone anymore? Understanding dawned on the officer's face. You want to coordinate with the occupied species. Turn internal unrest into coordinated rebellion. I want to show the Dominion something they've never seen before, Sarah corrected. A galaxy that fights back. Together. That's never been done. The logistics alone are impossible. I know. Sarah smiled. But 8 months ago, everyone said holding off a Dominion fleet with one damaged cruiser was impossible too. Captain Vasquez showed us that impossible just means someone hasn't tried hard enough yet. She pulled up a new file, communication protocols, contact procedures, covert channels to resistance cells across dozens of worlds. Get me in touch with every rebel, every resistance fighter, every conquered species that's still angry enough to remember their chains. Sarah ordered. The Dominion thinks this is a human problem. It's time we showed them this is a galactic problem. The sleeping giant. Calder hadn't held a blade in 73 cycles. He stood now in the darkness of his dwelling, the weight of the ceremonial war, knife unfamiliar in his hands. The weapon had been hidden beneath the floor for decades, wrapped in cloth that bore the sigils of his clan, symbols the Dominion had forbidden. His daughter, Sira, watched from the doorway. She had been born under occupation. She had never known the Velcari as warriors, only as subjects. Feather, she said quietly. If the peacekeepers find that, then they find it. Kelter turned the blade over, studying the edge. Still sharp after all these years. I have lived long enough as something I am not. You're being foolish. One transmission from some human doesn't change anything. The Dominion is everywhere, all-powerful, eternal. Kelter looked at his daughter. That is what they taught you. That is what we allowed them to teach you. He set the blade down carefully on the table between them. But I remember, when we stood on the cliffs of Korthax and swore we would never bow. I remember when 300 Velcari warriors held the pass against 10,000 Dominion drones. I remember our last transmission to the fleet, knowing we would die, and not caring because we would die free. Sira stared at the blade. What happened? We lost. Kelter's voice was hollow. We lost, and we surrendered, and we told ourselves it was the smart choice. The rational choice. That living as subjects was better than dying as warriors. He picked up the blade again. The humans have reminded me of something I had forgotten. What? That some things are worth dying for. A soft chime from Sira's communication device interrupted them. She glanced at it, then froze. Father. It's a message. Encrypted. The signature is. She looked up, eyes wide. It's from the human resistance. Kelter felt something cold and hot move through his chest simultaneously. Show me. Sira activated the holo display. A human woman appeared, older, with hair like silver and eyes that had seen too many battles. My name is Admiral Sarah Chen, of the United Terran Defense Force. If you are receiving this message, it means you have been identified as someone who still remembers what freedom feels like. I will not waste your time with platitudes. The Dominion is stronger than humanity. They are stronger than any single species. But they are not stronger than all of us together. The Admiral paused, as if choosing her words carefully. We are organizing a coordinated action. Not tomorrow. Not in a few cycles. But when the moment is right, when the Dominion is stretched too thin, when their attention is divided, we will strike. All of us. Every occupied world. Every resistance cell. Every person who still has the courage to say no more. I cannot promise you victory. I cannot even promise you survival. But I can promise you this. You will not die on your knees. The message ended with a simple code sequence. Contact protocols, encrypted channels, a way to coordinate. Ciro was silent for a long moment. Father, this is suicide. Even if every occupied species rose up simultaneously, the Dominion would crush us. They have the ships, the weapons, the infrastructure. We would be throwing ourselves against an immovable wall. Yes, Kelter agreed. We would. He held up the war knife, letting the light catch its edge. But walls can crack. And the Dominion has never faced a wall that fights back. You're really going to do this? I am going to contact the others who remember. The old warriors. The ones who buried their weapons, and their pride and their honor to survive. Kelter's grip tightened on the blade. And I am going to ask them if they want to die as what they were, or continue living as what the Dominion made them. Sarah looked at her father, really looked at him, and saw something she'd never seen before. Not the tired laborer who worked in the Dominion factories. Not the quiet man who bowed his head when peacekeepers passed. She saw the warrior her people had been before the conquest.
What would you have me do?
She asked quietly. Kelter smiled. Learn how to hold a blade, daughter. The galaxy is about to remember how to fight. It's happening on 27 worlds. Intelligence Director Sarkson's voice was carefully controlled. But Warlord Thexul could hear the strain beneath. He studied the galactic display before him, watching the markers spread like infection across occupied space. Define EAT, he said. Coordinated communications. Weapons caches being uncovered from pre-conquest hideaways. Old rebel networks reactivating. Training camps being established in remote regions. Sarkson manipulated the display, highlighting clusters of activity. The pattern is unmistakable. They are preparing for something. Coordinated by the humans. Commander Kelvoth stated, yes. We've intercepted fragments of transmissions from their Admiral Chen. She's reaching out to resistance elements across the occupied territories. Sarkson pulled up a decoded message. She's promising them nothing. No rescue. No reinforcements. Just the opportunity to fight together when humanity makes its stand. And they're responding. Thexil observed. 73% of contacted cells have acknowledged and begun preparations. The Velkari have been particularly enthusiastic. Thexil's mandibles clicked softly, a sound of consideration. The Velkari. We broke them in 4 months. They have been compliant for 73 cycles. What changed? The humans changed them. Sarkson said simply. Or rather, reminded them of what they were. The transmission from the Valiant has become something more than propaganda. It has become permission. Permission. To remember. To resist. To die for something. Sarkson met the warlord's 4 eyes. For 11,000 years, we have relied on a simple truth. Conquered species eventually accept their fate, because acceptance is survival. But the humans have introduced a competing truth. Some things matter more than survival. The chamber fell silent, except for the hum of the strategic systems. Finally, Kelvoth spoke. Then we accelerate the human campaign. We crush them before this. Infection spreads further. We mass our fleets and we end humanity within the next cycle. No, Thexel said, Warlord. That is exactly what the humans want us to do. Thexel gestured at the display. Look at the pattern. Admiral Chen is not just organizing resistance. She is baiting us. She wants us to commit our forces to a decisive campaign against humanity. She wants us to strip the occupied territories of peacekeepers and fleet elements. She wants us to create an opening. Understanding rippled through the council. If we concentrate on humanity, the occupied worlds revolt. Sarkson said slowly. If we maintain occupation forces, we cannot bring sufficient strength to bear on the human territories. We become divided. Precisely. Thexil turned away from the display. Admiral Chen is attempting to turn our strength into weakness, our size into a vulnerability. He was silent for a moment. She is trying to make us fight a war on 1,000 fronts. Then what do we do? Kelvoth demanded. Thexil considered the question. The Dominion had faced rebellions before, of course. Individual species attempting to throw off occupation. But never like this. Never coordinated. Never unified by a common symbol. Never inspired by the example of a species that refused to accept the inevitable. Would demonstrate the futility of resistance. Thexil said finally. We select one of the occupied worlds, one that has embraced this human contagion, and we make an example. Not extermination. Something more precise. We show the galaxy what happens when you listen to human fairy tales about defiance. Which world? Sarkson asked. Thexil didn't hesitate. Velkar Prime. If we break the Velkari a second time, the other species will remember that the Dominion cannot be resisted. That temporary inspiration means nothing against 11,000 years of inevitability. And humanity. Maintain pressure. Force them to expend resources on defense. But do not commit to a decisive campaign. Not yet. Thexil turned back to the display. Let Admiral Chen watch as her coordinated resistance crumbles. Let her see that inspiration is not enough. Then, when the occupied worlds have been reminded of their place, we will turn our full attention to the humans. He studied the small blue cluster that marked human space. And we will show the galaxy what happens to species that teach dangerous lessons. They're going after Velkar Prime. Admiral Sarah Chen absorbed the intelligence report without expression. Around her, the command crew of the Indomitable waited for her response. Outside the bridge viewport, a fleet of human warships. Everything they could scrape together from their shrinking territory hung in formation. 43 capital ships. 600 support vessels. Against a Dominion armada that numbered in the tens of thousands. How many Dominion ships? Sarah asked. 12 dreadnoughts. 48 cruisers. Support elements. Her intelligence officer, Commander Park, pulled up the tactical display. They're not being subtle. They want the occupied worlds to see this. To see what happens when you rebel. Sarah studied the numbers. The Velkari had maybe 100,000 resistance fighters. Poorly equipped. No fleet support. They would last days at most. That's that kind of firepower. Admiral, Captain Morrison said quietly. We can't save them. Even if we committed our entire fleet, We'd be destroyed before we reached Velkar Prime. And Earth would be defenseless. I know. Then, I know, Sarah repeated. She looked at the faces around her. Young. Determined. Scared. They had signed up to defend humanity. Not to throw themselves into a suicide mission for an alien species they'd never met. But what was the point of surviving if they abandoned everyone who'd believed in them? Sarah pulled up a communication file. Admiral Chen of the Indomitable to all fleet elements. She began recording. I'm not going to lie to you. The Dominion is moving against Velkar Prime with overwhelming force. The Velkari resistance is going to die if we don't intervene. And if we do intervene, most of us are going to die with them. She paused. Tactically, the smart move is to stay here. Defend our own territory. Let the Velkari pay the price for believing our message about resistance. She could see her crew processing this, knowing it was true. But here's what I keep thinking about. Sarah continued. Captain Elena Vasquez and the crew of the Valiant made a choice. They knew they couldn't win. Knew their sacrifice wouldn't save Arcturus. But they fought anyway, because they understood something about humanity. We don't measure success by survival. We measure it by whether we stayed true to who we are. She stood, moving to the viewport. We told the occupied species to rise up. We told them they weren't alone anymore. We told them that together we could challenge the Dominion. Sarah turned back to her crew. If we abandon the Velkari now, we prove the Dominion right. We prove that human defiance was just words. That when it mattered, we chose survival over solidarity. Admiral, Morrison said carefully, even if we're right morally, this could mean the end of humanity. Earth is vulnerable. If we lose the fleet, then we lose the fleet. Sarah said simply. But the galaxy will know that humans keep their promises. That when we say, we fight together, we mean it. And maybe, just maybe, that will matter more than one more fleet defending one more planet. She looked around the bridge. I'm not ordering anyone to follow me. This is volunteer only. Any ship that wants to remain and defend Earth, I'll understand. No judgment. No shame. You signed up to protect humanity, not to die for aliens. Silence filled the bridge. Then Captain Morrison stood. With respect, Admiral, you're wrong about one thing. Sir, we didn't sign up to protect humanity. We signed up to be the kind of species worth protecting. Morrison smiled grimly. I'm in. Around the bridge, one by one, the crew stood. Navigation. Sarah asked. Course to Velkar Prime plotted. Admiral. Weapons. Armed and ready. Engineering. Reactors at 110%. We'll give them everything we've got. Sarah felt something swell in her chest, pride mixed with grief, because she knew what this meant. Knew that many of these people would never see Earth again. Al ships. She broadcast. This is Admiral Chen. We have new orders. We're going to Velkar Prime. We're going to stand with the Velkari. And we're going to show the Dominion something they've never seen before in a galaxy that doesn't fight alone anymore. She paused, then added, the Valiant bought us time with their sacrifice. Now it's our turn to buy something for the galaxy. Let's make sure the price we pay matters. 40. 3 capital ships. 600 support vessels. Against 12 dreadnoughts. The mathematics said it was impossible. But humans had never been very good at mathematics. Jump drives charging. Navigation reported. Sarah Chen took one last look at the tactical display showing Earth, home, sanctuary, the planet she was supposed to protect. Then she gave the order. All ships, execute jump. The human fleet vanished into FTL, leaving Earth's orbit empty. And across occupied space, resistance cells received a simple message: hold on. Help is coming.